Let's head to the phones. Joining us right now, Republican strategist, political strategist, co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. Doing great. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for coming on today. Donald Trump is upset. Well, I know it's shocking to everybody. Trump is upset, claims that the system is rigged, that the delegate system is rigged against him. There was a headline, I think it was Breitbart, that over the weekend said that Donald Trump is complaining about the Cruz campaign staging a coordinated attack in Georgia that led to Trump delegate candidates being challenged and thrown out of the system. Talk us through this. I mean, all these states have different rules that are set up and rules that have been set up for a while. But what is the Trump camp arguing here, and are they off base as far as the system being rigged against them?
It's hard for me to see how it's rigged. I mean, every state has its own rules, and if you're truly a federalist, you don't mind that. And the rules were set, in most cases, long before Trump was ever even an active candidate for president. So, you know, this idea that somehow Cruz is manipulating each state individually, I think, is ridiculous. The rules exist, and they exist for everyone. Obviously, in most states, there's a primary or a caucus, which determines how many delegates are bound for each candidate, at least on the first ballot. And then after that, it's all according to the state's rules. Now, there are a couple states that are different, like Colorado, which didn't have a primary or a caucus, but instead had a convention. But, you know, Trump's people were on TV over the weekend saying nobody voted in Colorado. Well, 65,000 people voted at the convention in Colorado. So I agree. I would prefer a system where you had a primary or a caucus, but it's up to Colorado to decide how they're going to elect their presidential nominee in a primary. So, yeah, look, this is why campaigns matter, particularly at the presidential level. This is why you don't hire flunkies and sycophants with no national campaign experience to manage a huge, $50 million enterprise like running for president. Cruz has a very serious team of operatives around him. So does Kasich. So did Rubio and Walker and so many other candidates. The two candidates that had the least professional campaign staffs were Trump and Carson, and both of them have underperformed given the opportunities that they had. And it didn't matter for Carson because he was never a threat. It matters considerably for Trump now because he's losing delegates he should be getting. He's losing them fair and square. You know, we'll see. It looks like the Trump campaign is going to file protests in Colorado and Missouri based on specifics that have happened in those states. But when they were asked on Meet the Press over the weekend, or I think it was on This Week on ABC, what facts do you have that the Cruz campaign has done anything against the rules? They could provide no evidence whatsoever. So, we'll see where it goes from here. I think Trump has a message that resonates with his voters that, quote, the system is rigged. I don't see how it's rigged. This is just the way the system is, and Cruz's team is playing the game better than Trump's team is so far.
And for many of these, this is about what happens after the first ballot, right? I mean, you're not having these delegates that are going to go into – if you're pledged on the first ballot and if Trump won that state, won that congressional district, and you were there, you have to vote for Trump on that first ballot, right?
That's right. And look, this is all a moot point if Trump gets 1,237 delegates or more on the first ballot. If he gets a majority plus one on the first ballot, nothing Cruz has done in the past 2 months to try to win additional delegates when the individual delegates are selected matters. And we're not going to know if that happens probably till June 7th. New Jersey's winner-take-all that day. California has a huge number of delegates at stake, even though it's proportional. We'll probably know quite a bit on that day as to whether Trump gets to 1237 or not. But you're right. Look, every state's rules are different. Pennsylvania, for example, 3/4 of their delegates are unbound on the first ballot. Texas's delegates, for the most part, become unbound on the third ballot. Florida's delegates become unbound on the fourth ballot. So you have to, this is a complicated situation. It's a Rubik's Cube. You have to know how many delegates you have on the first ballot and how many you have on the second and third and fourth ballot to know when people become unbound so that you can make the strongest case that you can to them when they become unbound at the convention itself. But right now, what the Cruz campaign is trying to do is they are trying to elect as many Cruz-supporting delegates as possible, even among those who have to vote for Trump on the first ballot. Because once they become unbound, they can choose to vote for Cruz, and if they're Cruz supporters, they're more likely to do that. And that's where they're succeeding. They succeeded in Wyoming, in North Dakota, in Iowa. I mean, they've succeeded in 6 or 8 states now. In a lot of these states, Trump is either not competing at all or he's massively disorganized, while Cruz's campaign is very well organized.
Well, really the only thing that I've seen from the Trump campaign as far as any sort of organization on the delegate level was when I think it was Ivanka Trump was putting out videos that, I mean, in total, very few people saw. But, if you were paying attention, you saw these videos in which she was telling people, hey, go to your precinct conventions, then go to your state convention, go to your county convention, so that way we can get, Trump supporters as delegates. And they were putting out YouTube videos, but it seems like that's as far as they went with any kind of campaign apparatus to win over delegates.
That's right, and that's obviously nowhere near enough. I mean, look, in big states, maybe that's helps a little bit. What matters more is in these small states, these rural states, where there's a complicated process to become a delegate. In Pennsylvania, it's too late to elect a delegate because the ballots are already set. They've been set for several weeks. A friend of mine is already going to become an alternate national delegate because there's only 3 people on the ballot, and his district has 3 people to get elected. So, I mean, part of the problem that Trump's campaign has had, to be really, really candid, is he's been really cheap in this campaign. He's brought on operatives in states late, and he cuts them as soon as their state votes. That's probably a good business approach if you want to keep the expenses low. But in terms of electing delegates and keeping your operation up and running, it's not real smart. In Texas, for example, his campaign staff went off the payroll, I think the day after March 1st, after the March 1st primary. We have our convention next month, and there's going to be tens of thousands of delegates to the state convention there, running for those national delegate slots, some of them. So, if he doesn't have an active campaign organization in Texas, he's going to get his lunch eaten again by Cruz in Texas. So, I think that's part of what's happened here is he's been cheap in terms of paying people in states. He only has state operations running in a few states that haven't voted yet. And then he doesn't have the national hierarchy doesn't understand this delegate process is working. Now, I think he's improved his team in the last couple of weeks, bringing Paul Manafort on and recently bringing on Rick Wiley, who's a very respected operative. But it may be too little too late because, again, these states have been working on identifying their delegates for months. And it starts with county conventions and then, district conventions and county conventions and then, state conventions. In many cases, those first 1 or 2 steps have already happened.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, a case that impacts not only the rest of the nation, but the state of Texas before the U.S. Supreme Court, that dealing with immigration. What can you tell us about, I guess, this story that's starting to heat up today?
Yeah, the arguments in the case challenging the executive amnesty are happening in front of the Supreme Court today. Attorney General Ken Paxton is in Washington. I don't know if he is personally arguing the case. I tend to doubt it. I presume it is the state Solicitor General Scott Keller, former counsel to Senator Ted Cruz, who's arguing the case. This is also the same case that the Congress, the U.S. Congress, the majority, filed a lawsuit in as well. So I believe they're a party to the case also, and I think they may even get 30 minutes to make their case, which is unusual. I mean, the House doesn't sue the executive branch very often, but it did happen in this case. If I remember correctly, the lower court ruled in favor of the state of Texas and of those challenging the executive branch in terms of overreach. So if we get a 4-4 ruling, it would be remanded back to lower court, which means the lower court ruling would stand. Now, it wouldn't mean that would be precedent. You could have a future challenge, but it would stand at least for the time being. So I think that's probably the most likely scenario. I think there's a chance they may actually win 5-3 or 6-2 because executive overreach here is so clear, and this really isn't an ideological issue. It's about overreach, not about the substance of the case itself. But yeah, it has huge implications, and we'll have a ruling probably the first couple of days of June as the spring term ends, and it will have huge ramifications on Obama's legacy on the immigration system in the United States and also on the presidential election.
Matt, you brought up Ken Paxton's name. His name has been brought up quite a bit lately. He's been under fire here in the state. So is Sid Miller, the Texas Ag Commissioner. What can you tell us right now about where these two maybe investigations are going? Are these two officials really on the hot seat here in the state?
I think to a certain extent they are. I mean, look, I'm a good Republican, and I support Republicans, and these are statewide elected officials. And I have more of a friendship and a personal respect for Paxton than I perhaps do for Sid Miller, who I've never really gotten to know. But they both have legal challenges right now. There's just no question about it. Now, the Paxton matter is a federal criminal indictment over state securities fraud that occurred in his personal capacity, not in his professional capacity. He was a state senator before he was elected attorney general, and the allegations occurred before then. But now there is an SEC lawsuit, a federal civil lawsuit, that basically mirrors the criminal indictment. He is trying to get the criminal indictment thrown out based on the way that the grand jury was handled, and that is in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals. It should be heard next month. So even if he gets that thrown out, the prosecutors have said they will re-impanel a new grand jury and seek another indictment, and he'll still have the SEC lawsuit. So his legal problems are not going away anytime soon, and they've gotten a little bit worse for him with the SEC lawsuit. But I think he's likely to go to trial, and that's going to take 6, 9, 12 months probably from where we are today. Miller has a number of kind of strange practices that he's undertaken at the Department of Agriculture, and it looks like he is now under investigation by the Texas Rangers for using official funds for some type of personal or medical procedure that's a little bit unusual that he went to Oklahoma for. There's been sort of questions swirling around him for a number of practices that he's used since he's been agriculture commissioner, hiring the wife of a political consultant, creating more senior-level roles within the department that pay $150,000 or more, and a couple other things. He's also had some people resign in his office, including his communications director recently, and Paxton's had some high-level resignations also. We'll see where it goes. In both cases, obviously, this is not helpful politically to the party, and it's not helpful for these two individuals who have their own challenges that they have to go face. I don't know that you're going to see resignations in either case because they both have the presumption of innocence, but there's going to be some pressure on them going forward, and they're going to have to fight their own battles individually. Absolutely.
Matt Mackowiak, visit mustreadtexas.com. Matt, what can people find on your website today?
Yeah, just beginning to update it for developments from over the weekend, obviously covering Cruz and all the news around Paxton and about Sid Miller. You can find the best news, opinion, and blog items from around the state of Texas at mustreadtexas.com.
All right. As always, Matt, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chad. Have a great week.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist and co-founder of mustreadtexas.com.